Ready to dive into COP29.
Baku was interesting, to say the least.
We've got reports piled high here. WMO, Carbon Brief, Euronews, even a UN Habitat report focusing on cities.
Cities are becoming key players, that's for sure.
You know this world, so no need for the basics. Let's go straight to the summit. Big wins, clashes. What signals did we get for the future?
It went beyond the usual headlines like climate finance goals, the whole Article 6 and carbon markets debate.
And cities, like you said, stepping up their climate game.
Yeah, lots to unpack.
Finance fight first. Euronews said a funding deal was reached, but Carbon Brief's analysis,
Well, it's more complicated, right?
way more. This new climate finance goal, the NCQG, it sparked a serious debate. Developing nations were pushing for more than just money.
Concrete numbers, yeah. Hard commitments from developed nations.
Exactly, a real put your money where your mouth is kind of thing.
And Brazil threatening to block the deal unless richer nations up their contributions? That wasn't just for show, was it? Definitely not. That was Brazil strategically using its position to highlight the lack of firm financial commitments. It reflects a wider trend, too.
Developing nations are demanding a fairer approach to climate finance.
Exactly. So, did they win? Was it a power play by developed countries? Or did we land somewhere in between?
It's hard to say. Carbon Brief pointed out how the final agreement encourages developing countries to pitch in, but it's voluntary. That was already in the Paris Agreement, but framing it within the NCQG discussions adds a new layer, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's a bit of a responsibility shift. But the text also mentions voluntary accounting of funds from institutions like the World Bank, and developing countries contribute to those too. On paper, at least, it's balancing a lot.
A delicate dance, for sure.
And it goes back to that core tension, right?
Mhm.
Developing countries are hit hardest by climate change, but need the richer nations for support to adapt and go green. The money fight is just a small part of that bigger power dynamic.
Let's move to another tricky topic. Carbon markets. Specifically Article 6 and the offsetting debate.
Ah, Article 6. This is where things get really technical. But it's also where climate justice arguments get real.
My feelings about carbon markets are mixed. On the one hand, incentivizing businesses to clean up seems practical. But the Climate Action Network, they have some serious concerns about offsetting being the main solution. We have their report right here.
They argue that it lets polluters just buy their way out of actually cutting emissions, a delay tactic, not real action.
And the IATP analysis. They go deep into the details of Article 6, pointing out those complexities and loopholes, the things that could really make it ineffective.
Like double dipping. They highlight how a country could sell carbon credits and then count those sales toward their own climate goals. Totally against the spirit of the Paris Agreement.
Sounds like a recipe for creative accounting, not real emission cuts. And with the stakes this high, those loopholes could have serious consequences.
Huge consequences. Imagine a company offsets by investing in tree planting. Then, wildfire wipes those trees out. Article 6, as is, doesn't have the safeguards for that, undermines the whole point of reducing emissions.
So it's not just about planting, it's making sure those trees survive long term. And measuring, monitoring, verifying those projects globally, that gets really complicated.
And equitable benefit sharing, the IATP analysis. They worry about how those benefits, financial and environmental, will be shared. Will they actually reach the communities hit hardest by climate change? Or will it just make corporations and wealthy nations richer?
A huge question, and it ties right into the larger climate justice movement. Carbon markets can't be talked about without addressing equity.
You're right. It's not just reducing emissions, it's doing it fairly. It needs to benefit the most vulnerable.
So we've got finance battles, carbon market conundrums, but there's another fascinating angle of COP29 that I want to get into.
The cities angle.
You got it. The UN Habitat World Cities report really emphasizes the double role cities play in climate change.
It's a paradox. They're big emitters, but also innovation hubs, and really vulnerable to climate impacts, too.
And the report, it highlights how informal settlements are on the front lines of climate change. They're so vulnerable. Makes you think about how we can tackle existing inequalities with climate action, not make them worse.
And that's where climate justice comes in. It's making sure the most vulnerable communities are heard, that their needs shape the decisions impacting their future.
More than just words, real action on the ground.
Exactly. And that means looking at climate action differently, seeing how social, economic, and environmental challenges are all linked.
Climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it's a human rights issue, a development issue. Global justice.
Well put. And that shift in perspective, it's in the growing demand for inclusive, equitable solutions, not just top-down orders.
Okay, finance, carbon markets, cities stepping up.
Yeah.
Anything else major from COP29 worth diving into?
What really struck me was the urgency. It's not just talk anymore. We're dealing with real consequences.
Yeah, the WMO report really drives that home. It's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Rising sea levels, extreme weather, agriculture, and water shifting.
And they highlight the need for climate services, the tools, the information to help people make smart choices in the face of all this.
Turning complex data into insights that can be used, like for disaster preparedness, long-term infrastructure planning.
Right. It's connecting science with what people actually need.
Okay.
So those on the front lines can adapt and build resilience.
It needs to be a collaboration then, right? Working with communities, stakeholders, to make sure those climate services actually fit their needs.
Exactly. Local knowledge is just as important as scientific data. One size fits all just doesn't work.
No, definitely not. The report actually highlighted some cool co-production examples, like a project in the Caribbean using seasonal forecasts to help farmers adapt to the changing rain, better crop yields, better livelihoods.
It's a great example, right? Climate services leading to actual benefits, giving people the power to make informed choices and take control of their climate future.
And it's not just adapting. The report talks about mitigation, too. Climate services can support that.
Absolutely. Accurate emissions data and projections, crucial for tracking progress toward those national climate goals and finding opportunities for more reductions.
Data to inform policy, track progress, hold ourselves accountable.
Exactly. This data-driven approach is only getting more important as we figure out the Paris Agreement and work toward that sustainable future.
So, climate justice, cities on the rise, the urgency of it all, the importance of information and data, COP29 feels like a turning point. The moment the world really got to grips with the reality of dealing with climate change.
I'd agree with that. There was a real sense of, we need to do this now. And while there were disagreements and bumps along the way, there was also this determination, like a collective, we need to step up together feeling.
That's a hopeful note. So looking ahead to COP30 in Brazil, what's top of mind? What questions, what challenges do you think will be front and center?
Climate finance is still going to be a sticking point. Developing nations want to see those hard commitments from developed countries. More transparency, too. That tension is going to be there in the negotiations.
We seem to be moving toward a fair approach, but there's that gap, right, between talk and action.
Oh, yeah. And I think Article 6 in carbon markets, there will be more pressure to make those rules stronger, to stop greenwashing, make sure those mechanisms actually lead to emission reductions.
Moving beyond offsets. Real transformation across the board.
Exactly. And cities and local communities, they'll keep gaining importance.
We're shifting, right, from top-down to more collaborative, inclusive approaches, recognizing that solutions need to fit local contexts.
Empowering people on the ground, they're the ones with some of the most innovative and effective solutions.
And don't forget technology and innovation. We need to keep investing in research and development. Find new, creative solutions to this crisis.
Human ingenuity. Clean energy, sustainable transport, resilient infrastructure.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, I think COP30 and how we tackle climate change globally, it depends on us working together. Collaboration, trust, shared responsibility.
We're all in this together, right? And we each have a part to play in creating a better, more sustainable future. Well said. As we dig deeper into these reports and analyses, what jumps out at you? Anything particularly significant or maybe surprising?
One thing that struck me was how the WMO report really stressed that need for granular climate data, especially at the city level. We're always talking global targets, national commitments. But when it comes to actually doing something, cities are the ones on the front line.
Totally. Cities are where it all happens.
They're dealing with the impacts right now. Heat waves, floods, sea level rise, and they're also coming up with the innovative solutions.
Exactly.
The report said we need more localized climate projections, better risk assessments, data that urban planners and policymakers can use, give cities the info they need to make good decisions on infrastructure, disaster preparedness, all of it.
And it's not just having the data, right? It needs to be usable. We need to turn that complex science into something city leaders can actually work with for their decision-making.
Close that gap between the science and what's actually happening. Make sure the latest research is being used for real-world action.
Yeah. And that takes collaboration. Scientists, policymakers, planners, the community, everyone working together, co-creating solutions that actually fit the specific needs and challenges of each city.
So no one-size-fits-all approach.
Nope. Every city is different. The solutions need to be just as diverse as the challenges they face.
It's exciting, though, isn't it? All that innovation at the city level.
Hmm.
Communities coming together to find solutions that work and are fair.
It is. It reminds you that even though climate change is global, the solutions are often local. People are resilient. They're coming up with great ideas.
It's that human ingenuity.
Yeah. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from COP29, from all of this that we've talked about today. The challenges are huge, but there's hope, too. We have the knowledge, the tools to build a more sustainable future.
It's about using that, right? That collective will, that sense that we're all responsible, turning it into action.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, climate justice needs to be at the center, making sure what we do benefits everyone, not just a few.
A future where everyone has clean air, clean water, a healthy planet.
A future worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for anyone wanting to learn more, we'll have links to all the reports and articles we discussed in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged,